Hi, welcome back, all of you, to the next lesson about as you graduate into different levels of architecture. We started with the persona of an architect. We looked at different elements like how do you build designing from using different tools. And then we look at something like how to really look at customer case study, reusable solutions, and how do you make use of them before you get into a day of life of architect. But one of the very important tools when you're talking about from a context of AWS is the well architected framework. So, as I told you before, do not equate architecture is equal to well architected framework. It is one of the very important best practices tool which has been given to all the architects to really design systems better, etc. Okay, so what is the AWS well architected? Basically, you can think about like a blueprint for building maybe secure, high performing, resilient, cost efficient systems. Okay, so it's used by partners, it's used by architects, even customers to evaluate and improve the cloud workloads. So understand they're not having a magic stick. It's nothing but a set of uh, best practices put into different pillars. And we'll talk about that in a while from now. Okay. It actually matters because you can identify some risks in your architecture. You can improve the performance, etc. Okay. Now let's share the screen and understand this in more detail. So if I really look at it from a perspective about the well architected framework. So you just have to land up on a page which is aws.amazon.com architect well architected. So do not worry in case you're not able to make a note of it. We will try to put all these links into your resources sections. Go there one by one, just keep clicking. You'll be able to get all the resources used in it. As I told you, this is a very important blueprint class for you, like if you're looking at an SAA exams or solution architect or solution architect professional exam, which I had passed, there are quite a lot of resources available. It's trying to connect the dots between multiple different resources, items, etc. So if you come back to the well architected page, you'll see that it talks about something like 6 pillars. So one of the thing which is very important, we call it in the architect world as a technical depth. Certain things, imagine you're building a risk management or fraud detection algorithm. There are two parts of any solution. One is called the functional part. You write algorithm, you write the Python code, you write the Java code. In today's world, you can generate those algorithms. The other side is something which is hidden. It's called technical depth. Basically, it's something which is non-functional requirements. So in the world of AWS, again, we're not trying to really generalize this, but looking at it from the AWS, you have these 6 pillars. So every time you're designing a solution, you'll have to really look at these 6 pillars. How well is your solutions or a system being well designed for operation excellence, for security, for reliability, for performance, for cost, and sustainability? So, as the name suggests, each of them is meant for a certain purpose. For example, if I look at operation excellence in simple words, you develop a system and roll out. You want to continuously try to see that you're monitoring that system, okay, and you're able to really look at automating the change, responding to events, etc. So operation excellence is like you talking to a COO of a company who's always constantly looking at the control of how they can ensure that there are procedures, key metrics to really ensure any system is always up and running. So imagine you're rolling out a generative AI chatbot into your customer. That's version one for you, right? You have to continuously monitor that for it. The second pillar is about security. It's a really vast topic. Now, the security pillar is not going to teach you security. Security pillar is talking about, have you taken all the precautions to ensure that security is well managed within your project, right? So it's picked up all the elements. Like if I go to AWS console and if I click security here, you would see that there are a lot of these tools, maybe 20 plus different services, starting with IAM. Okay, then there is key management service like encryptions. Then there are proactive services like guard duty, detective. Okay, you have tools which are like for DDoS, for WAF and Shield. The point is, this is a very product management view. Now, if you get a project, not all these elements of security which has been listed in the security identity compliance are important, but we have some set of rules to check whether my application context is able to really follow these rules. So endpoint is to implement it with these services, but before you implement, do you actually require it? Does the customer require it? So you ask the right questions to your security pillar so that you're very sure that this is useful or not useful. If useful, how do you implement? If not useful, why you're not implementing it? You just document it. Okay. So imagine the first concept when you come to well architected framework is theoretically understanding the six pillars. Irrespective of what your background is, if you download each of these pillars as a PDF document, for example, I'm just showing you one, you'll find a PDF document, you'll see that there is a 1,000 page set of document, 1,000 page plus you will get 200, 250, 250 each into six. You get some 1,000 page document. I would recommend that if you can spend time to read those pages, because this is not the course to cover well architected framework. There's several in resources available. I think the best course you can do is to just get an idea that first theoretically understand you will have to run through these six pillars into your project. It can be a new project, it can be an old project, it can be an escalated project, it doesn't matter. You just run a review. Now, the question is, how will you run the review? For example, operation excellence is continuous monitoring, security is to check. We have some questions available on each of these pillars. You can ask those questions to a customer, and when the customer is able to really tell yes, it means like they're doing it, just validate it. Telling no, then you can look at it like, do you want to implement it, etc. First, let's finish the six pillars at a very high level. Then we have the reliability pillar. Reliability pillar is more to look at the failure to meet demands. So how do you do system design, recovery plan? For when you write your exams on a solution architect, you'll see that there are a lot of things about how do you load balances, how do you scale it, how do you do auto scaling, how do you do recovery planning. Okay, those things comes under reliability pillar. Imagine you're wearing different hats. Operation excellence, when you go to a customer, you might review your project with the COO. Security, you might review it with the CSO or a head of security. Reliability and performance generally runs at the architect level. So you might find some architect profile with your customers where you're asking the right questions like what is the intended scalability for the next 5 years, 10 years? How do you prepare for it? What kind of procedures you're going to follow? If there is a different availability zones, different regions, how do you create a distributed design? All these comes under reliability. And then we have performance. Performance is always an art. It's not an easy area to really look at it. In previous days, 10 years back, 15 years, you go to a database, you can fine tune the database for performance by adjusting some sizing, etc. But performance is a very broad topic about what kind of resource types you use for a project. For example, in certain kind of paradigm, you might use a serverless. Certain times, serverless may not be the right thing. Do I have to go for monitoring the performance to see whether there is anything going wrong with CloudWatch, etc., etc. So performance is an overall perspective about everything. For example, if you're using DynamoDB, how you can fine tune DynamoDB to the best. It's a serverless, but still you have been given some configurable parameters. Performance can range from you trying to streamline and structure what kind of technology you're trying to select for a specific project into looking at resource types, resource sizes, etc. And then we have cost, the most important thing. So when you're talking operation excellence to COO, security to CSO, reliability performance to chief architect of your customer, sometimes you might find one person trying to talk to you, but I'm just telling you the persona at the other side might be different. Cost is generally spoken to the delivery heads or the CFO, the finance team. This is about using tools like spending over time. What's the fund allocation? How do you really monitor the cost, okay, how do you use organizations, cost control, tagging, all this comes under the cost optimization. And then we have sustainability pillar, which is basically the carbon footprint, about shared responsibility model, impact of the environment, all this comes as sustainability. So first, broadly, if anybody in AWS who are architecting system, you should get a very high level 100 view of all these six pillars. Okay. Step two is to go and download each of these documents. For example, if I download this Operation Excellence PDF, it's around 226 page. So I approximately told you, like, if you download all of them, it'll be 1,000 plus page. If I have to cover each of these pillars, it might take anywhere between 3 days to 5 days, which is not the intent. The thing is, if you're trying to do any designing with AWS, you must know the six pillars. This is the de facto, this is the basic, this is the first step you do for every project. Okay, the project can be a new project can be an existing project, whatever it is. Now let's look at how these documents are arranged. For example, if I open an operation excellence and open this PDF, it will talk about in the document. I'm just giving you a blueprint about how these documents will be looking at for you. First, it will explain to you what the operation excellence mean. Now this, whatever I'm explaining, you can take and replicate it for every pillar which is coming up, so you don't have to really worry. So let's look at operation excellence as a way for you to learn how you actually go through the document, right? So first, it will give you a paragraph about what is operation excellence. You can go through. In case you're very new, it is a great way to really get an intro to that. After that, it talks about design principles. Imagine every time you're trying to think about operation excellence, you imagine the six hats theory. You wear the hat of an operation excellence and think these design principles, right? So it means, like, some of the design principles are organizing teams around outcomes, observability for actionable insight, safely automate where possible, make frequent small reversible change, like you do an incremental change, you might do DevOps, etc. Refine operation procedures frequently. How do you manage the change? Anticipate failure. It is actually not the reliability failure, but you understand that there can be failure, event and metrics, and use managed service. So if you're spending a time to read the operation excellence, first read the intro, go very deep and understand what is each of these design principles mean. Okay, now again, they're not the only ones you must be thinking in a project, but these are good guidelines coming from best practices from AWS with all the architects experience going in. So if you're foolproofing this, most of the time what you need for this pillar will be get covered. So once you've gone through all the design principles, it will talk about the definitions, about what you mean by the best practice areas for operation excellence, talks about how an organization preparing, operating, and evolving. End of the day, operation excellence is like somebody trying to maintain the system for constant change, for constant trigger, notifications, if there is a high level failure, how to operate it, etc. Okay, then it gets into a different understanding of each of the elements. And the most important thing is, you will see that best practices which have been given here, like how will you know a project is going to follow principles of operation excellence on a design. So this documentation gives you like BP 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, each of these elements. Now, what you will do is you will pick each of these elements and first try to understand theoretically what do you mean by evaluating customer need. This is a long exercise. So in case you're intending, you want to really look at go this in deep, you can attend the other workshops we are trying to do offline. But end of the day, if you will be good if you can take some time and read yourself for a week about operation excellence, but understanding BP1 to BP6. Now what is BP1 to BP6? It's basically looking at, like, you suppose you're meeting your customers and you want to evaluate whether the project what is giving is meeting this pillar of operation excellence. You'll have to go through asking these questions on each of these six or seven things. Now, evaluating customer needs is you're looking at some outcomes. Okay, how do you really look at it? Similarly, you'll see all the BP1 to BP6 getting covered here. You can go through. And then you'll see a lot of resources which are happening here at the end, one by one. you will see that a lot of contents are available. It's a really, really huge documents which you will have to go through. If you have time, please spend time on this. But if you really see that you want to get a quick feel of this, you can just have a look at this documentations. So this is a 226-page document only for operation excellence. So if I have to give you a synopsis across the six pillars, understand the definition, look at what questions you would ask a customer to really ensure that it follows the blueprint. Third, you can go very deep. Like once you know when you're asking question, the customer might tell yes or no, right? When you tell yes, see whether you can improve that yes. If it tells no, then you can look at like, is there any risk in the project? Yes and no, both will translate to some services in the operation excellence. So operation excellence might be that you will be using something under the management governance, right? Basically, you might be trying to do something like monitoring something. Okay, you could be using some DevOps strategies, which is basically to do incremental change. It depends on every level of project. Similarly, you'll see that when you go into security pillar, and if you download the documentation, it will go very deep into making you understand another 240-page similar context. You will start with what is security, and then it'll go deep into these elements. So very important piece which I would suggest is, once you know you want to become an ace architect with AWS, you know the design, which is through diagramming, observing a lot of documents, and then you look at it from a reusable solution library, customer case study, and then you touch this well architected framework, spend enough and enough time into this. It cannot happen just over one day class or something, 2 days. You should spend at least 2 to 3 weeks reading these documentations. These documentations are the pillar post of any architect's diary. Basically, this is what they will be using day in and day out to really understand whether my project is meeting the requirements. So that's the six pillars for you. Okay, we're not going to cover this in detail, but this is a very important piece of documentations. Now, the question here for all of us will be that if I have these six pillars, imagine I'm going to a customer tomorrow to review an existing chatbot. Okay. So, will I just copy paste all these questions into a Word document, sit before customers? So cumbersome. So, AWS made your life very easy by giving you a tool. We will do a hands on the tool in a short while. If you go into management governance, you will find that under the management governance, there is a tool called well architected tool. So you can use this tool. Now imagine whatever is there in the documentation, this six pillars, which is a PDF of 1,000 page, has been automated into this tool. So you'll be able to use this tool. You just go before a customer, and then you can sit before the customers and you can run this tool, and it will generate a report for you, which will be pretty useful for you while you're building your questions, right? So questions is inside this particular tool. Whatever you saw as theory here, you will see that it's also available. For example, if I go to the operation excellence pillar, you saw that there is BPS, BP1, BP2, etc., which are available, right? So we saw this, all these questions, which we, let's open that. These questions, you can also observe that within the tool. So here, the well-architected tool is like an automation which has been given to you to really look at all these six pillars. Okay, and you can generate a report and tell the customer that your existing project has got so many risk. It's got high risk, it's got medium risk, your low risk, and you can certain things you can acknowledge like you're doing really good. That's what you do with the tool. We will reserve the next lesson to cover the tool, but ultimately, you should have the vision that the well architected framework has got three parts. It's got six pillars, it's got a well architected framework tool, and the third part is it's got lenses. Okay. Okay. Now, lenses are typically when you're thinking about a project from a specific workload. Imagine if I'm going to look at security on IoT versus security in general, they are two different topics. So when I look at asking questions in general about security, I would be asking, do you have an account plan? Do you have the user base? Do you encrypt your data? Will you be using anything to do proactive, predictive managing of your traffic? Do you have a firewall in place? Do you have a DDoS in place? Imagine the project is in the IoT and you want to do security. You'll still have the security pillar which will run the first layer. After that, you might want to really use a lens which might be from the IoT domain. So lenses are specialized area where you apply the well architected. Always well architected lenses will be on the bottom of your six pillars. It means first you run the six pillars, then you will apply the lens. For a single project, you might have multiple lenses to be applied, etc. Let's take an example. Imagine I'm doing a project on analytics, right? So I will pick up a lenses which are specific to analytics here and see whether I can apply this lenses to the project. So when I click the data analytics, like you saw operation excellence, you will find a data analytical lens which is available. Now the question here, what is required here will be different. Now imagine the same operation excellence. If you are in an analytical project, you might want to question it from the domain. Okay, so that is where you will find some additional questions added to your well architected framework. End of the day, any project starts with a review, whether it's a new project, old project, okay, or a project in the on a fire. So what you do is to ask the right questions. And the problem is, can you ask the right questions? Yes and no, because you cannot just put together. So AWS has put together all what you have to ask the customers at the first level, and then you can add your incremental questions. Now, these are the questions, like there are around 58 questions on the first six pillars. And then you can additionally add based on what you're trying to do, you can add the lenses. So just summarize this so that it doesn't become very big. Well architected framework is nothing but six pillars: operation excellence, security, reliability, performance, cost, and sustainability. Plus, it's got lenses per workload. Okay, for a generative AI, we have lenses, responsible AI, we have lenses, machine learning lenses, industry lenses, end user lenses, IoT lens, something like that. And then there is something called guidance, which is given to you, some set of documentation which can help you. How do I plan a well architected framework into your customers? The most important thing among the top of it is your tool. So imagine the takeaway for this particular lesson is like well architected framework is another one more way an architect thinks a project, right? One is to do the designing, second is to look at reusable solutions and the patterns. The third one will be to use the well architected framework to architect the project. Use the pillars, use the lenses, use the guidance, ensure that your project is in place. Okay, with that, we'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks for watching.